Do you have an example where simplicity worked at scale?
Yeah, pretty much every single time. I mean, I think about it like this. There's a brand I consult with, and I can't say exactly who they are, but it's two 22-year-old kids, like legitimately
Oh,
really intelligent, but they're 22 years old. They started their business at the beginning of this year, and last month they just closed up at $4.5 million in revenue, which is going to shake out to be 20% EBITDA, and they sell one product.
Hey, welcome back to Right Media Group Chronicles. We are keeping it real, sharing fresh ideas, and giving you the fuel to keep moving forward. Let's jump in.
welcome to today's episode. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Right Media Group and specialize in helping marketing agencies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your agency business to the next level, make sure to stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs. Today I'm joined by Grayson Cross, Chief Growth Officer at WKND. Grayson has managed over 500 million in ad spend, driven 2 billion in sales, and now scales both brands and investments. Grayson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Would you mind to introduce yourself to the audience?
I absolutely can. It always feels so weird doing this because I'm more of a podcast listener than getting on a podcast side. But kind of like you said, my name's Grayson. I'm managing partner, Weekend Digital, Weekend Investments, and I consider myself a data scientist. Like you said, I've definitely been around the block. I've been in the game for about 10 years now from the e-com side of it. And I find the most passion I have right now is just doing a lot of case studies on LTV and then on a lot of the investments I'm currently involved with.
So, apparently, you sold your first SEO agency at 18. What was that moment like for you?
It was definitely very interesting. I have a lot of stories out there about some of my first businesses. It was, I would consider more of like a full stack, like web agency at the time. But at the time, like we were building like Wix sites. This was like
Yeah.
Dreamweaver and Wix back in the day. So SEO has changed a lot since now, but it definitely made it very clear to me that the most value is built in the sale of an asset, not in the running of an asset.
Yeah. So pretty much you started early. Like, did you already have that mindset of I wanna do business, I wanna work for myself. I like investments.
I think so. I got really into early print on demand type drop shipping. I'm not really a big fan of drop shipping, but I think the definition has changed a lot now. So one of my first businesses, I opened when I was like 16 years old, and it was selling basically bootleg anime t-shirts, like way back in the day. That was print on demand, and you could, printers would print whatever they wanted. So I would follow and see what was growing popular from Japan to the US, and then
Mhm.
basically the day after run a ton of Facebook ads around it. And obviously at the time I didn't see that ever ending until I realized about how copyright works. But when you're a 16-year-old, you really don't think about how that stuff works.
Yeah.
But obviously that doesn't work anymore, right?
It's crazy you mentioned Japan and like all these anime t-shirts and this K-pop music. I feel like it's exploding right now as well. Crazy.
It's
Like
very
like the
go ahead.
Demon Hunter, for example. I mean, that's come out as well, and that's everybody. I just keep hearing on the radio, like off and on. And obviously my niece-in-law, she's 6, bless her. She made me watch the movie, and obviously the music is quite catchy, I have to say.
I think that it's not strange that a lot of Western marketing or Western, I'd say, consumerism is getting more and more driven towards Eastern consumerism, both from like, like you said, like the K-pop Demon Hunters. That's a lot of like the Korean type of stuff. We've seen it in like the health and beauty industry for a long time. For like you look at like the ancient herbal medicines, ancient Chinese medicines, very common. And then I'd say probably 5-10 years ago, Korea and China were like the place to go for the health and beauty standards. Lots and lots of those face creams, those type of products that were being sold made their migration here. And I feel like we're kind of just seeing it at the end state here with a lot of like a lot of the media that is becoming way more popular here in the US.
So previously when you spoke to my business partner, Chris, you said the best brands keep it simple. Do you have an example where simplicity worked at scale?
Yeah, pretty much every single time. I mean, I think about it like this. There's a brand I consult with, and I can't say exactly who they are, but it's two 22-year-old kids, like legitimately
Oh,
really intelligent, but they're 22 years old. They started their business at the beginning of this year, and last month they just closed up at $4.5 million in revenue, which is going to shake out to be 20% EBITDA and they sell one product. They're super popular on TikTok Shop, super popular on Facebook paid ads, and all that their product is a single ingredient supplement product. And I say like that keep it simple mentality is what works the best, because when they want to A/B test something, making one test affects every single customer. I see a lot of companies that have, hundreds of SKUs, dozens to hundreds of SKUs. And if you do any kind of test with like your top product, it doesn't make a big difference in the overall sales number. Where when these guys were doing landing page experiments, if they get a 10% change on their landing page, then that affects every single customer because they have one SKU. And they saw the massive changes from that. Same thing from the retention metrics, like because it is a supplement. So there was a lot of subscription involved here. Same thing on that. When you make one change and you see it work, it affects every single customer you have, which that's why I think the simplicity works. Because before a lot of companies are trying to get to 5, 6, 7 SKUs, start with one and then just make 7 offers on it until you get the offer that works versus trying to expand.
So you still do the A/B testing, but you just do that on that single product rather than across the 100 SKUs, and then you just don't really know what you're testing at this point.
Yeah, 100%. If you're like, hey, I think the growth of the work, if you say, hey, we want to test whether a model in our product photo does better, whether having a person holding the product does better. If you have to do that for 100 products, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of calories to make happen. But if you got one product, you can do it in like an afternoon,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And earlier with the chat you had with Chris as well, you mentioned we should treat marketing like finance. Can you explain what you mean by that?
I got in a yelling match like probably 2 weeks ago with a CFO of a business.
A yelling match.
Yeah, I just don't understand. I do not understand how finance and marketing can be so disconnected. I'll give you like the stage here where this business, they had a fixed cost and a variable cost. We look at a business, fixed cost, the stuff that doesn't change every month. Think about like rent, think about salaried employees, think about debt servicing, whatever, this dollar amount. In this example, this business, the CFO, I had to walk him through the numbers. It was insane that if we spent more, we would make more in a margin perspective, not just a top line revenue perspective. He was looking at the business. He said, well, 20% of our, let's just say 25% of our revenue we were spending in ad spend. I said, like, we're not making money. I'm like, the only way of doing this, only way of fixing this is either reducing our fixed overhead, aka cutting employees' salaries, overhead, stuff like this, or spending more. Because if we spent more, we would generate more top line, which would also translate to more bottom line margin, which would evenly distribute and cover that fixed overhead. And he just did not get it. And I had to like get out like the whiteboard and explain that if we explain, and I mean, this is like a, like Harvard MBA type of a person. I'm like, how can a CFO not understand this? So when I say that you have to treat marketing like finance, I say it because they are the same thing. It's all just one big formula. They are all the same thing. When you say I'm going to spend $1 and I hear CFO says, well, we need to make, for every dollar we spend, we need to make $7 back. I say that's 100% not true. You're just not spending enough. If you need to spend $1 and make like $2.5 back, that works. And you just need to spend way more dollars for that to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's other things at higher volume that come in, like, fulfillment, stuff like this. But yeah, marketing and finance need to be tied at the hip. And the best marketers I've ever met in my entire life are ones that either have a finance background or they're marketers who really pursued finance after they got into it. That's what I'd say.
I see. So for the clients that you work with, what would you say is a mistake they make over and over again?
I'd say the mistake that they make over and over again is to cut their spend. I think that's it. I think
Cutting
that when we get
their ad spend.
Yeah, cutting their ad spend, cutting their media spend, cutting just spend in general.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think it's a lifestyle creep. We talk about in entrepreneur's life, when somebody gets successful, I think most entrepreneurs, most people listening can remember the first month that they had where they made like $10 or $20 in personal income in a month. And they're like, whoa, your life is like changed forever, right? Now, what usually happens is that the more you make, the more your lifestyle creep goes around it, where you get a bigger house, you get a nicer car, you get all these things that go along with it. And I think businesses are the same way, where when you're designing a business, it needs to be designed in a way that as it grows, you don't need more people. That's like the fixed versus variable overhead side. I see a lot of businesses, the biggest mistake they do is they wait too long to make cuts, or they allow their business to grow and just waste money on things that just don't really matter. So I gave an example earlier. I spoke to a business at the beginning of last year that was doing somewhere in the $3 to $5 million a month in revenue, and they had 2 total employees. They had 2 co-founders.
Wow.
And that was it. And everyone else was either like a done for you agency type relationship, or a contractor that kind of already knew their scope of work. There wasn't like a massive team that needed to be managed. There wasn't like a huge dollar to overhead amount. Pretty much everything went to either the cost of goods or it went back into the business from a marketing component. And the biggest mistake I continue to see like every year is I'll go into a P&L and they'll have $100,000 a month, let's say $500,000 a month in revenue, and they'll be spending $200,000 a month on salaries. And I'm like, this just doesn't pencil out. It just doesn't make any sense, you know?
So, I mean, technically for me, if you grow, in my perspective, you do need more employees to manage delivery. Clearly, we're not on the same page there. So can you kind of explain as to why with growth you don't need more employees?
I think it depends on the business. So let's take I do almost exclusively e-commerce. So let's use e-com as an example. Most companies use something called a 3PL that fulfills all of their orders, right? If I'm doing $1 million in revenue a year, and then I go to $10 million in revenue a year, realistically, the only extra positions I would need to hire are probably extra people in customer service, which is something you can hire an agency to do. Or I would need extra people to fulfill orders, but that's what I'd have a 3PL for, right? Everything else, when you really think about it, is like, well, what changes when revenue goes up? Say, okay, well, I'm going to need somebody to actually manage my books and do that correctly. I'm going to need somebody to answer customer service, but that's it. Everything else becomes like an extraneous, like it's a want, not a need. Revenue goes up means you just have more dollars going in and more orders going out. But those orders ultimately are still going through that you're not directly managing.
Would you say AI sort of helps in that you don't need more employees?
Yes, I would say so. So let's give an example of this. If you're $1 million in revenue and I say you need to improve your business by 1%, $1 million a year and 1% revenue, and you say, okay, well, that's $10,000, right? It's not a huge change for the business. It's $10,000 if I make a 1% improvement. However, when you get to $1 million a month, right, and you make a 1%, that's $10 million a year, or $120,000 in change, right? And that's where those 1% efforts really start to add up. So you look at an employee or you look at a teammate, and let's talk like you own a supplement, a subscription brand. You say, I'm going to hire an employee and they are going to increase my lifetime value by 10%, a very small number. They're going to increase the value of my subscriptions by 10% over 12 months. Now, at $1 million a year, that 10% is $100K. That probably, just if you count the cost of the product, at like 30 to 40%, you're making $60,000 in profit there. So you hire an employee, he makes $60,000 additional profit for the business. Not a big difference. Now, again, same thing from 1 to 10, that same employee, now if at 10% at 12 million, he's making $1.2 million of additional revenue for the business, shakes out to like $600,000 to $700,000 of profit. Now you're going to hire that employee for probably $100,000 to $200,000 a year, and their value is now 3 to 4x for you. At the low scale, AI can do this. I think AI can do it at all scales, but at the low scale, you can, as a solopreneur, most people are having a limited marketing team. AI can really help guide you in the right ways of increasing your LTV without needing to hire an entire employee to just do that. Make it a shared responsibility. And then at the other side of the coin is when you then hire that employee at that larger scale and you force them to leverage AI, that LTV can be much greater. What you can gain out of that employee, that value prop, is going to be so much greater.
No, I agree with you there. Are there any specific AI tools that you're currently implementing in your business, or potentially maybe launching your own softwares? Who knows?
Yeah, I think the AI, which is everyone just put a wrapper on ChatGPT over the last couple of years, was pretty straightforward. I think the 3 biggest AI tools is one, like ChatGPT, like without OpenAI, ChatGPT, without a shadow of a doubt, it is so robust in its problem-solving ability and what it can do, from image creation, from video creation. I'm thinking more like Google VO for that example, for video creation.
I've seen a couple of things it does. It's crazy.
It's insane. But the analytic and thinking ability that ChatGPT has is insane given enough context. And then I think
You
the
worded
third
that
one,
carefully.
given the context, both
Mhm.
that it has and that we have currently. Yeah, I would say that those are the definitely going to be from a analytics piece. It's going to be ChatGPT, and then from a video creation, Google VO is insane. What it can do is just unreal. And then Higgsfield AI. Higgsfield AI is probably the most underutilized and impressive image and video generation AI software in the world
To be fair, I
because
haven't had that one. What was it, Higgsfield?
Higgsfield AI, it is probably the best video and image creation in the entire world right now, purely because the people who own it put basically no restrictions on it. So like you can do whatever you want and create what like the weirdest, most insane, and its context is massive. So I
Oh, I
think that
see.
if we consider like OpenAI like the Apple of the AI world where they only put out perfect polished products, then this is like the Android of the world, like Higgsfield is,
Mhm.
because they put out stuff that does amazing stuff, not the best user, but it can do really cool and impressive things.
Yeah, I see. Awesome. So you mentioned all the noise and saturation in the agency space. What would you say has been the toughest part for you?
Commoditization. So I think agencies used to be a lot more. We think agencies are early advertising. We think Mad Men, like Madison Avenue. Like I think a lot of people have seen that. I've seen the original advertisers in New York. And when you left a business, the biggest fear, like it's so funny they talk about this, like, oh, I'm going to take my book of business with me because it was such a relationship game, is what it
Mhm.
was. And now it is becoming more and more commoditized. That it's the equivalent of buying products off the shelf. The agencies that me personally, I had an amazing client. We were charging just shy of $100,000 a month, but the amount of revenue that we were making them was insane, right? And you can actually come to the table and say it doesn't matter if I'm charging you 100K a month if I'm making you $600,000 in profit. It doesn't matter, right? So that's what it's just been in the last, I'd say, 24 months. The commoditization, the productization has made the agency sphere really, really difficult to operate in
Mhm.
unless you're just really insanely good at what you do, you
Yeah.
know?
No, I've heard it. I've heard it all the time. The space is very saturated. But then spoken to some marketing agency founders, and they said they actually don't mind it being so saturated because many times they get clients come to them that have been burned, like the freelancers, somebody who just launched an agency and had a low ticket offer, and they were like, "Yeah, I'd rather go with this rather than with yourself because you're so much more expensive." And then they end up coming
Yeah.
back to him because they realize value,
Right. Exactly.
right? So what is your personal take on it? So are you I mean, obviously you're saying the space is saturated, but
Yeah.
have you had any
I
burned
think
clients before as well?
Yeah, I think my take on it is it's a bad good thing because I honestly think COVID was a good example of e-commerce companies, and this is a good example of e-commerce companies that shouldn't have existed that have been dying out. There were so many COVID boom and busts e-com companies, and I'm seeing the same thing from the agency space right now, where there's a lot of agencies that actually had pretty shitty operations, pretty
Mhm,
shitty operators, and did not make good results for their clients, and they're ceasing to exist.
mhm,
And I'm seeing that happen left and right. I call it the PE, where private equity companies would launch, an e-com company. They would send it to an agency. I'm not going to say any names, but you can look at some of the biggest partners out there for PE firms. The agency would basically just exist to suck money from the company, and deliver medium to okay results. Then 3 to 4 years later, the money would dry up on that investment. They would close out and then wash, rinse, and repeat, and they would just do that. And then I would say every 5 to 10, they get a unicorn that actually works.
mhm,
And there's lots of agencies out there that have like a 90 to 100% success ratio.
mhm.
Um, but they're obviously going to be a lot more intensive and have a lot better talent and only say we take on like 5 total clients a year or something like that, right?
Yeah. So what are you currently doing right now to stand out in the saturated space?
Just be really good. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, word of mouth works insanely well. I think just being really, really good at what you do is like ultimately the best thing that you could possibly do. I'm focusing way more on and I even talked about like the finance to marketing component. Any marketer can go and say, I'm going to give you a 5X in your Facebook ads. Like it's actually not that hard. But can that same person say, I'm going to give you a 5X in your Facebook ads, and I know your business is going to make bottom line profit this month, right? Very, very different conversation. And I think that the value, or for instance, I have a brand that they lose $100 on their first order. I think like their total customer acquisition cost is like $80. Their AOV is like 120. So they've got like a $40 cost of goods, $30 to $40 cost of goods. So they lose around $100 on their first order. Which is not great.
Yeah.
Okay. But previously their biggest thing is like, oh, we need to reduce our customer acquisition costs. We've got to do everything we can to pull the brakes out. And then after we did a pretty deep LTV study, I'm like, actually, you guys are making so much money in the next 6 to 12 months. You need to change nothing. You need to scale up and change nothing. Go get a line of credit, get like $1 million line of credit, scale up 90 days in, your CAC drops from negative 80 to 100 to negative 30. 6 months in, you're making $100 to $200 in gross profit. A year in, you're making $300 to $500 in gross profit from each customer cohort. I'm like, this is an easy win.
I see.
Most businesses just don't know that because they're not most agencies don't focus on back-end analytics. They focus on front-end vanity metrics, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, from what I gather from the conversation we've had so far, you don't focus on the short-term growth. You also focus on the long-term growth for your clients, which I think is far more valuable than I'm going to get you results right now.
Yeah. I always ask this. I'm going to ask you the same question. And thank you so much for getting that. If I had a box, you have 2 boxes in front of you, okay? And both of them, you cost $1 to buy the box from me. And one of the boxes you could open instantly, and inside the box was $2, right? So you give me $1, I give you this box, and it's $2. The other one you buy from me, and it's got $5 in it, but you can't open it for 3 months. I give you the box, it's got a timer on it, doesn't open for 3 months. Which box are you going to buy?
It's a no-brainer, right? Obviously,
Right.
women tend to be more impatient, I have to say, but it's worth the wait.
You would think, and though that seems like a very straightforward question, our thought would be, okay, well, hold on, I'd rather wait for the $5 one. It's actually not always the right answer, and I can explain this why. So businesses have different levels of growth and different levels of where they're at. Where a lot of businesses don't have like that line of credit, they don't have the ability to wait, right? The ability to go negative, or they just don't have the faith. I would say the faith to go negative, or the stomach, even is the better way of saying it. I was talking to some friends of mine last week. They have a successful men's TRT online clinic, and they are first order profitable. And I went through it with them, and I said, well, you could be like 5 times your size in like 6 to 12 months if you accept a 90-day conversion window, aka 90-day payback cycle, 3 months, versus having to be first order profitable. They look through the numbers. Everything is 100% accurate. They have a large sample size. The numbers make sense. And they say, yeah, I just like going to sleep, not being $1 million in debt. And they said, you're right. We can look at it. We can all agree on it. But this just makes me nervous, even though I understand the numbers are correct.
Yeah, because it's still the unexpected, even though you do have that prediction. You still don't know what's going to happen end of the day. Yeah,
Right. And they
I
say,
completely love that perspective you just given me.
yeah, because I agree with you that I would take the $5 every time, but I also have a pretty strong stomach, and they could hit you. Well, what happens if our bank account gets frozen? What happens if our ad account gets taken down? What happens if this? There's a million things that could possibly happen between day 1 and day 90 while you're waiting to collect a check. What if the law changes? There's things that could happen.
Yeah. Moving back to the AI, where would you say founders are wasting most of their time with AI?
Shiny object syndrome. I think that I look at a lot of things with AI. This could be controversial for me to say, but I look at things with AI and say, does it make sense for me to either dedicate my own time to this or hire an employee to build a automation for this or try to automate it? Or does it make sense just to hire the person? And what I saw happen with AI is that a lot of these advertising companies spent 6 to 12 months trying to build the really good ad image generator,
Mhm.
and then ChatGPT pushes out in a free update. And they just wasted years and hundreds of thousands of dollars of employee, compensation. So I think the way that they waste the most time is trying to develop custom tools, to be honest with, develop their own LLM custom
Internal
tools
tools.
versus just leveraging pre-built solutions from the marketplace.
Mhm.
So that's like number one. And number two is it more effective just to hire someone overseas for $10 to $15 an hour to do this job because at $15 an hour overseas gets you something pretty decent? Or is it more effective to spend the money and build the automation? And more often than not, I've found that it is still cheaper and more effective to throw a body at it, a calculated SOP processed out body, versus spending the time, energy, and effort to build an LLM that is not perfect. That's
Yeah.
what I would say.
I mean, it's actually crazy because I have seen it all over the news where like big corporations invest so much funds and then, yeah, like you say, something better comes out from ChatGPT because you can't compete with those budgets
Yeah,
that
agree.
they have going on right now. That's all they're focusing on.
I totally
So,
agree.
are there any recent campaigns that you're proud of?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yeah, I am. So the
You recently
campaigns that make me
purchased the building as well. I have to say, I checked your LinkedIn out. A
that
building that you're going to turn into what again?
I bought an old school that I'm turning into, it's a 17,000 square foot school that I'm turning into luxury apartments. So
Yeah.
outskirts of the Seattle area. I just was so, I think this is very interesting to me. And let's like shift topics real quick.
Yeah.
I was like super stressed, super burnt out, probably 5 or 6 years into my marketing career. And I looked a lot into some of the stoicism, Greek philosophers, Roman philosophers. And a lot of things that they talked about was that those who worked with their minds a lot, which is basically what we did, would find the most relief in their leisure time. But back in the day, like the leisure time for, a Roman philosopher, Greek philosopher was like, like tilling his garden, building a guest house, grinding grapes. These were the things that they
Like a
did
little
that
project.
physical, simple activities that did not require as much brain as they required brawn. And we see some of the most successful people in the world that get into like mixed martial arts. They get into really heavy into the gym. Yeah, see, you get it. Exactly. Like it's because those things are necessary for your mental health.
Yeah.
So I would say that that's like the first part, and then jump back towards the campaign part. The best campaigns in the entire world are the ones that you've never heard of. And I think that I like to operate under the same way because they are iterative work on stuff that already worked. So for instance, the best stuff that I can say that I've ever done is taking ads that were at like 80% capacity and then changing the headline, right? Doing 100 headline experiments. And then it went from like an 80% to like a 200. Right. Or changing the destination that the customer want, making that full funnel perfect
Mhm.
from, hey, our click-through rate was like a 0.6. We changed the headline. It went to a 2. And now just by making that one change, you added 140% of value,
Yeah.
just from changing a headline, the iterative work.
How do you usually get clients like the successful campaign you just talked about?
How do I get the clients to like
Yeah.
come work with me? Just word of mouth. I mean, that's like 99% of it.
Is that all you're focusing on, referrals then?
I'd say it's a red flag for me when an agency has to run ads to get clients, right? And this is speaking my own way, where if no one, people don't line up to say that I want to work with these guys, you should work with them, then you have a product problem. I say as an agency, you have a problem delivering a product that does really well.
Mhm.
If you do, my dad, he owns a business. I grew up in construction, very blessed. My dad's a hardworking man. He put me through, a lot of my life. But one of the things he told me first lessons was if you do really good work for people, they'll tell one or maybe two of their friends.
Mhm.
If you do bad work, they'll tell every single person that they know, which is
Mhm.
very, very, very true. Every client we've ever worked with, the first thing that they usually tell you is their negative experiences with agencies. They usually name drop. They say, I worked with this company, it was awful. I worked with this company, it was awful. They never say, well, I worked with this company and they were okay. I worked with this
Mhm.
company, they did a good job. They'll name drop all the bads first. If you lower your churn to the point where you're losing like 5 to 10, like a 5 or 10% churn ratio,
Mhm.
you got 10 clients, you're losing make like a half a client a month, you lose one every other month,
Hmm.
then you're nearing the stage of you delivering a high quality product that people would rather, they would rather stay with you than to hire an internal team, even if it's cheaper to hire an internal team, you know?
No, I see. So obviously, the one kind of controversy I have internally is, can you scale referrals? Because it's not like ads is that you kind of just pump more money into it and then you grow, you scale. But referrals is a bit different unless you have a good referral system. What do you think
I don't
personally?
I think you can to a certain degree. I
Hmm.
think that referrals most of the time is not leveraged enough in an agency
Hmm.
where turning your best clients into case studies is like number one. Most agencies, they do good for a client and then, they turn them into a case study and they say, look at what we did. What this needs to become, and you see some agencies do a really good job at that and say, hey, we did really good work together. We'd really like you to go to XYZ event, right? About the success that we had together. And you see a lot of brand owners that the agency invites them to go speak in an event where other brands are going to be and say, I'm brand owner X. This is what we accomplished with agency Y, right? That is the best way of scaling them. That is the real way because constantly providing, and I want to say, I call it like the flex decks, where if you're with a client and you're doing really good work and you can make them a case study a month, every time you have even the minor wins, you say, hey John, we just had a big win, we turned into a slide deck for you, here you go, put it on your LinkedIn, we know that you like to build your LinkedIn network. Now you're basically giving them the entire content for them to put on their LinkedIn for them. That's like in my opinion, one of the most effective ways you can scale referrals in an agency business.
In regards to that, I've spoken to some agency owners where they don't leverage testimonials and they kind of feel a struggle. Like, how do I approach my client and just ask them for a testimonial? Do you have like any sort of small steps they can take just to kind of go for it?
Yeah, I mean, with all your make sure you have a good contract. It's like the first thing. When you start working with a client, my favorite line that you should always add is, we can use any and all materials for marketing purposes. And you agree to this. There's a lot of clients are like, well, we're under NDA. We've talked, you and I briefly spoke to, we're under NDA. You can't talk about what we did together. That doesn't work in the marketing sphere. That might work in the finance sphere. That might work in other things. What doesn't work in the marketing sphere, because your job is to do good work and then tell everyone about the good work you did. You have to market yourself. So the best way of getting good testimonials, if you guys use a note taker, if you use that, build an automation that anytime there's certain words that will trigger it, like this was awesome, great work, those kind of things. Trigger an automation that clips those 30-second clips. Like, just do that. Then you'll have within a month that you can backfill the data, but you'll have hundreds and hundreds of clips of all your clients saying, oh, this was so awesome on XYZ. Oh, we did a good job on this. Nice job, guys. And then you just did all your testimonial work just like that,
I see. You clearly like to use automations a lot as well, and AI. You're utilizing that, which I think is superb. Like, it's a tool, and if you use that, you become efficient. So, do you have a lot of specific automations you use internally in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think probably some of the biggest things right now is just the way that it changes. So, I'm sorry, when the way that it changes is like different platforms have different automations. Biggest one is, how do I reduce calls as much as possible? So the calls right now, I think for most businesses are to a certain degree manual. We have like a note taker that comes in. Most businesses have a note taker that comes in and shoots you the notes after. Automate those notes to go into whatever platform you use, whether it be like Monday.com or ClickUp, whatever. Use AI to assign the action item, a due date, and a person from every call. Get into the habit of being in calls and saying, oh, okay, action item for my team will do XYZ by this date, to make it easier for the AI. And then you just save like 30 minutes of post-call delineation and note taking.
No, I see. That's incredible. I'm going to move back into philosophy because I certainly find this topic fascinating. So, in regards to business owners and even marketing agency owners, anyone pretty much who owns a business, sometimes they leave their corporate jobs where they spend 8 hours a day and then they start their own thing. They realize they're doing 16 hours, more than that. How would you personally manage that? And like in regards to like mental health as well. Do you have any steps you take to kind of make sure you remove yourself and you have that kind of you time where you can shut down and relax?
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
I think it's a very important topic, to be fair, and it's not widely
I do
discussed
think
out
so.
there.
I think that burnout culture is very, very real. I think a lot of people are suffering from it,
Yeah.
right now. And I am not exempt from that, to be super clear. I think that for me personally, I think my biggest problem definitely has to do with the level of which you dedicate that time and being mindful of it. I don't think enough people do make that me time. That me time can look like a lot of things, but I think the best time is like meditation time for sure, and saying, "Hey, you're on your goals. You know what you need to do," and checking in on those goals to make sure you're not crazy. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's what I would
I
say.
feel like personally, just to add to that, I feel like if you do kind of take that time away, you thinking you restrict yourself and you won't be able to do that. But I think if you actually do have that me time, you come back stronger and more productive.
Yeah, I agree.
So in regards to your agency, what is the plan for the next 12 months?
That's a hard question. I can't reveal that one. We'll
You can't
see.
reveal that one.
I really think that the next 90 days of what is released with AI is going to answer a lot of those questions. For me
Ooh.
personally, the things that I can be a little bit uh, less mysterious on that. For me, I believe that the biggest things I'm going to be focusing on is my team,
Mhm.
myself, and the processes around it. What is going to win, and even Alex Hormozi came on this, is really, really good processes and the least amount of waste humanly possible. That's what I would say.
Okay. So if you had a magic wand, and asked this to all of my guests, to fix one thing in a business that's slowing you down or keeping you away from growth, what would it be?
One thing that's slowing you down, keeping you away from growth,
Mm.
more hours in the day. I would say that.
4
More
hours in
hours
the
in the
day.
day. ADHD, shiny object syndrome, and more hours in the day. I think my personally biggest problem is different than most business owners.
Mhm.
My biggest problem is there's so much amazing stuff happening right
Yeah.
now. It's very, very difficult to lock down and focus on one. That's what I would say.
And for people that were interested to look at your services and wanted to connect with you, where could they find you?
Find me on Instagram or find me on my website, graysoncross.com. So graysoncross.com, easiest way. I'm active on Instagram, Grayson Cross Official. I will respond to anyone about anything. I love talking to people about themselves, their businesses. And it is probably the most fulfilling thing I can do is just to spend time with people who need help. So that's what I would say, best way of finding me.
Grayson, thank you very much for this podcast. It's been insightful for me as well.
Thank you so much. This was really fun. I hope anyone listening got some value out of it. I think closing as I hand this to you, if you're listening to this, go look into your business and find out what is the goal of this next 12 months for you. Burnout is super real. I suffered from it. The rest of us suffered from it. Set those goals and then understand what is reasonable for you to accomplish in a month, in a week, and in a day. And once you accomplish it, be good and be content that you accomplished the goal for
Yeah.
the day and get it done quickly. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And be realistic and have me time as well, just to add to that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree.
Thank you very much, Grayson. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Yolana.